Hello, just doing a quick sound check. It's going to sound different. I'm not at the studio, I'm broadcasting from home, and as part of the sickness I've had, I've lost part of my voice. But if you can hear me and understand me, if you could just put a comment in the live chat so at least I know the technology is working. And I'll see you in 5 minutes and 25 seconds. Hello, welcome to In Studio Live, the 83rd edition. Now, it's really good to be back, but as you can see, things are a little bit different. I'll explain as we go on what's different tonight and the reasons why that's the case. So let's just move on. On the show tonight, well, I say it's going to be a short show. I think it will actually come in at about an hour. From my own point of view, I am still a long way from being 100% well. You can probably hear in my voice this food poisoning, because that's what I think it is, possibly salmonella, that I contracted 10 days ago now, has really taken it out of me. I've got very little energy, and it's also affected my voice. So the aim is to keep the show short. It's short in one sense, in that the review sections I've pre-recorded earlier today, because I don't know whether my voice would last the whole a whole show. So if I pre-record those, I've got breaks in between as we go on, and you'll hear certainly on one of them, I think towards the end the voice was beginning to fail a little bit. So hopefully doing it this way I can get through the show. The second thing you'll notice is different. I'm actually broadcasting from home rather than from the studio. It just felt too much work to drive over there. I thought if I could do things here at home, then I could pace myself throughout the day to get everything ready, rather than trying to do it all in one go at the studio. So my apologies if I'm not on full form with the show tonight, but I'll do my best. I'm going to do the usual image feedback. I've got some from email and some from Facebook, and then the bulk section is going to be a walkthrough of some images I created at Fountains Abbey whilst I was away on holiday. A holiday on which I captured this bug, for whatever it is, on there. It is a nasty one. Thankfully Anne didn't get it. Unfortunately, my friends that I was staying with, Jill, she caught it and is still suffering from it as well. So this is why we believe it's through food poisoning, because we looked at there was only one thing that the two of us had in common in terms of food. So that's the thought anyway. So anyway, that's what the talk is about. It's going to be Fountains Abbey. I've pre-recorded it just to give myself a breather when we get to that point. And of course, right at the end, I'll announce my image of the week. And also apologies that the sound's not up to the usual standard. It was more a case of what gear have I got here at home that I can cobble together a live stream with. We are interactive. Please respond in the live chat. Ask questions there. I will do my best to answer them as we go on in the show. And if I can't answer them tonight, I'll hold them over for next week. So keep the conversation going there. Nice to see a few faces on there. Nice to have you join us, Janice. So that proves it really is live at the moment, because I'm reading the chat, and in case nobody believes me, there it is on the screen, on there. So yep, we are live. Right. So let's just play in the first of the videos. This is the feedback on the images which were sent to me by email. So let's join me earlier in the day as I went through them. Right, let's have a look at the images which have been sent through to me via email this week. As ever, I give priority to images sent by email because I've got more information in there to be able to give better feedback. I've had 2 people provide me images this week. They are from Bernard Robinson. Hi Bernard, hope you're watching, and Jenny Gare. Right, let's have a look at these images over in Lightroom. I shall go full screen on that so you can see them a little bit better. Now let's start off with a set of images from Jenny. So this is a wedding that she passed in Taiwan. So right, let's have a look at the shooting data on this. So what have we got? 60th of a second f 5.3. It's a Panasonic camera, ISO 200, focal length. Right. Okay, I suspect this was auto settings on there. First of all, first thing to do with an image like this is to check the focus. Now, what I'm seeing here is the bride is very slightly soft. Yet, yeah, I don't know whether this is a camera resolution issue on there. I think the flowers appear to be slightly sharper than the bride, so I'm wondering whether it's slightly forward focusing on that image, where we're just seeing a little bit in front of the image on there with it. It's a nice shot. I'm not so sure about the pose of this particular bridesmaid. It's a bit cruel, but I would almost be tempted to crop her out, do something like that, where all the bridesmaids looking in the same direction. Now, got a little bit of overexposure on there, which we can correct. I think we've probably got enough just to bring that back in. No, perhaps not. No, that is truly overexposed on there. Fraction of underexposure would be required on that, but just a third of a stop with that image. Right, let's move on, Jenny, to one of the others. Right, I really like this. This is a shot, a general holiday shot in the Maldives. Again, let's look at the shooting data on here. And we have got right, 5mm equating to 28mm. So it's a wide angle shot on there. I'm just wondering what I'd need to do a little bit of research on the type of camera that this is on there. A couple of things to say with it. It's slightly underexposed. I would be tempted with this to do a little bit of editing in post-production, I think, on there. Regarding composition, I do like the tree on the left-hand side. I like the framing of the palm fronds up above, the blue sky, the blue sea, the yellow sands and all that. I think we just need to go into develop module, do a little bit of work on this. I'd like to try and bring back the detail in the sand, to bring those highlights down. That was easy enough. Bring the shadows up to get that detail in the benches. Now that's made a bit of a difference. Maybe just bring the general exposure up and then bring the highlights back down to preserve the highlight detail. Now I think that's helping. I would probably just have a look at that blue sky and maybe just darken it slightly, just very, very slightly on there. just to give a bit more bite to it, and maybe just a fraction increase on the saturation on there. Now, looking at that exposure, can I afford to bring it up a little bit higher? Yes, I would say something along those lines with it. And let's just have a look at before and after. You see how that's just brought the image to life on there. Now, I just want to comment one thing about the positioning on this. I'm not sure you could have done any different to what you did, but just be very careful about top of the sunbeds there. You just got it below the horizon. I wouldn't want to see it any closer than that on there. So maybe try shooting from lower down, but there's a risk then you wouldn't get the palm fronds in there. Ideally, I'd choose an angle where the top of the sunbed is just above the horizon. I think that could be quite interesting, but it does work as it is on there. So moving on. Right, again, we've got another couple of images which are scenics. It's slightly underexposed. You've done the right thing. You've actually exposed for the highlights to protect those. So I'm just going to bring down, get rid of that clipping highlight on there. But that does mean we need to do a little bit of work in post just to bring back the detail in the rest of the image and bring those highlights back down again. And then I'm going to use the haze slider just to bring out the blue in the scene. I'd watched a couple of people down here, the heads sticking up. It's nice to have that point of interest, but this particular figure looks a little bit distracting on there. There's not enough of them visible in the shot. I might be tempted to just try and them out actually. Yeah. And it replaces one head with another, not what I was after. Yeah, I'd probably need to go into Photoshop to do it, but you get the idea. I think it's slightly stronger for just one figure rather than two. With that, let's move along to the next one. Again, exactly the same issues with this. It's slightly overexposed on the highlights, but we've got enough generally protect them. We need to probably bring the shadows up just a little bit. I'm going to go with the dehaze on that to bring a little bit of bite to it. Exposure. Now, I'm going to experiment with the white balance to see what that will give us. And I quite like a little bit more warmth to it. The highlights, bring them back down again. Yeah, they are actually totally blown out there. Now, it'd be nice to have some foreground interest with this shot, which we haven't got. It's a little bit bland with it. And could do with a bit more detail, mainly foreground. So I don't know whether you're shooting it from the banks or a boat. If it was on the banks, so I'm trying to get down low, get a little bit of that foreground in there. If it was on a boat, maybe just a little bit of the railings or somebody looking out to sea or into the field on that. So that's that one. Let's move along to the next. This looks like a Norwegian sort of shot. Love the stream of light through there. Again, let's see what we can do with this. I'm wondering black and white, to be perfectly honest with it. So go to one of my favourite black and white settings, and let's go from there. Make this quite contrasty. Bring the shadows and exposure up just a little bit on that. And clarity and yeah. And I think that's coming that's beginning to work on there. It'd be nice to have that foreground interest again. I would be tempted to lose a little bit of the foreground, maybe just a touch of the sky on there. I'm going to use a graduated filter, just try darkening the sky a little bit. That's done a little bit too much with it. We just bring that back. We just bring that back a fraction. But I think just having that darker sky up there helps. So come out of the graduated filter and then bring those highlights down and clarity. And I'd try something like that with it. Try and make it a dramatic black and white. Do I need a vignette? Yes. Very, very slight on it. Very slight indeed. Can't go any more than -8 on that. So that's that one, moving along. Right, now we've come on to Bernard. So hi Bernard, on this. There's some nice poppies. I'm not so keen on the white vignette on this, I'm afraid. Lovely focus on our hero poppy. That works nicely. I would have liked to have not lost the edge on there. I'd have gone just slightly wider to bring that in with it. I think the arrangement of the poppies is good on the shot, and really do like the fact your point of focus is good. It's mainly the white vignette I don't think works on there. Let's just have a look at the shooting data on it. Well, the shooting data is telling me 1/250 of a second f4. You've done well with the depth of field at f4 on that, I have to say. Focal length is the... Right, so I'm going to have a look at that. 228mm equivalent. Right, yeah, that's quite zoomed in on there with it. It's yeah, it's a lovely shot. Nothing much more I'd want to say about the settings. They all look fairly sensible for what you're doing. You've got a shutter speed that's appropriate to the focal length on there, so you're able to hand hold, and as I say, nice and sharp with it. So lovely shot. Ditch the white vignette on there, I would say. So that brings me to the end of the images submitted by email. So let me hand back to myself live. Okay, and here I am back live. So let's move along with the slides. Just to reiterate, if you've got images you want feedback on, you can see I do much more in-depth feedback on images which are sent to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. So I'd love to see your images there, and it's perfectly fine to submit them to the Facebook group and email them as well. They don't have to be different images, but it'd be great to have some for next Sunday emailed to me from the viewers. Right, and as ever, my standard plea of subscribe, like and share. So if for any reason you're watching this and aren't subscribed, do me a favour, hit the subscribe button. You'll make a sick man feel very happy. Hit the like button. We've only got 4 likes and there's at least 11 of you watching at the moment, so just reach out with your mouse and hit that like button, and that will help as well. And my thanks as ever to everyone who shares details of these live streams. Hopefully next week it'll be back to normal properly. And don't forget to join the Facebook group. I'm guessing most of you on here already are, but the link's down below for any newbies, and my newsletter also linked down below to sign up for those. Right. Okay, Fountains Abbey. This was my first full day in North Yorkshire. I did some photography the day before, arriving there and staying with Jill and Pete, my friends from a couple of cruises we've met on, and they took me around the local area. I'll probably show some of those in a future live stream, but I wanted to concentrate just on Fountains Abbey tonight, which we did, just myself and Anne, our first day there. This, I add, is prior to food poisoning, but I was in tourist mode rather than photographer mode on that. One day I want to go back with my photographer hat on to photograph Fountains Abbey. It's a difficult one to justify actually because it's National Trust and I can't sell the photos, but I guess I can use them in tutorials such as this. So let me talk you through a selection. Again, I pre-recorded it earlier in the day because I didn't know what my energy levels would be like for the whole evening. Welcome to Fountains Abbey. These are a selection of images I created at the Abbey on our first full day in Yorkshire. Hasten to add, this was before I took ill. I'm not presenting them in the order in which I created them, but I'm trying to present them in perhaps a more sensible sequence. And so here we can see the Abbey itself, and it took me quite a while to find a view that I was really happy with to give the feeling of the Abbey in its surroundings. This is actually photographed from the other side of the river, which runs alongside the Abbey, or even under it in places. And for all the shots, I was shooting in aperture priority mode. I was shooting with basically riding exposure compensation as I went through to get the optimal exposure, which means that in some cases that means I would have to do work in post-production. Well, I can talk about that as we go through. We can see here with this one, I was ISO 100. It was a bright sunny day. I've got the nice classic view, blue sky. This is typical postcard shot of Fountains Abbey, and I wanted to make sure I got that. It's the cover shot for the for any album or anything like that. It's the setting of the location, and the aim here is to try and give that sense of place, which is something which I'm going to be asking you to do as part of the before and after challenge again. We've covered sense of place in the past, but this is me putting it into practice here at Fountains Abbey. So I've got the tower. It's basically just off centre on there, but I've framed everything with the trees on the left hand side, a little bit of growth in the foreground. And from this angle, I managed to keep the number of visitors down to a minimum. There's a small group over on either side. And so shot at 320th of a second, f8, classic view. Nothing particularly remarkable, except it's a good establishing shot for any sequence to do with Fountains Abbey. Then I thought, well, should it be black and white? I tend to think black and white with Fountains Abbey. I've seen so many black and white images. This isn't exactly the same shot. It was taken from the same location, but if I toggle between them, you can see there's a little bit of a change of location, and the people change in position. This one I processed black and white. Actually, what I did is I applied exactly the same settings from the previous image, and then I did a black and white conversion. And what I've tried to do with this is to enhance the contrast. If I go into the develop module, I can show you a couple of things. In the black and white conversion itself, I brought down the blue slider to really darken that sky on there. I'd already started by applying a red filter profile to it to simulate doing black and white photography with a red filter. That should darken the sky, but I wanted it even darker. I've added some contrast to it, and that's enabled me to keep these edges dark. I've also applied a little bit of a vignette to it, which you may not have been able to see, but that helps darken the edges and just draw the eye into the image. Is the colour version better than the black and white version? I think it's all down to personal preference and what you're looking for from an image. I like both. I think the colour version will be easier one to sell. Moving away from the Abbey, there's a couple of art installations there at the moment, including this bridge, which is more or less on the spot of an old bridge. You can just see what I think is the base of the old bridge, which hasn't been there for about 100 years, I think, from memory. And so this is not the normal place where you can cross the river, but it was when I visit a location and I come across something that's unusual, non-standard, that's only there temporarily, I like to try and make sure I photograph it, because that's where I'm capturing a moment in history. So the bridge was important. I'd have loved to have got it with fewer people in there, but it is what it is on that. Why am I showing you the image of the bridge? Not only because it is something, and I would encourage you, when you've got something unique in a location or something that's temporarily there, to document it photographically, but also because this gave me a unique opportunity. This view of Fountains Abbey is no longer possible. The bridge has gone. It was only there for a short period of time, and as I'm recording this, I believe the bridge is now gone, but I photographed this from the top of it. So this view that you're now seeing is not a view that you can just rock up and get, unless you happen to have a drone, of course. So I've got a unique view because of that, and I took the opportunity to capture it. Is it the best photo in the world? No, by no means, but it is an unusual perspective, and I love the fact that it's flat on with the tower, that we've got the river running alongside, we've got the fields and the path leading in there. Not my best shot from the day, but I wanted to include it in the selection because of the importance of taking the opportunities that are unique to the particular day that you're photographing. This isn't from the bridge. Oh, excuse me. This isn't from the bridge, this is further along the path. But again, similar sort of idea, that square on view of the tower, the main window, but now we've got the stream running in the foreground. Now what's unusual about this image is a little bit of the post-production work in it, in that the way I recall the scene was the light was playing on the Abbey, and the rest of the scene was in shadow, and I wanted to capture that in the image. So when I go into the develop module, I can show you what I've actually done here. I wanted to enhance that. I have applied a radial filter. If I just turn it off, that's the image without the filter. You can see it a little bit better there. But it didn't feel as though my eye was being drawn to the Abbey in a way that I wanted it. So what I've done is I've added this radial filter. And the way the radial filters work is they apply on the outside. It's like you could look at it as an offset vignette. So what I've done with it is I've darkened everything on the outside. I have boosted the shadows back so that I didn't take that completely to black in the outside with it, and I've added that little bit of clarity into there that the area with the bright sunlight on didn't require. So when I come out of that, what you see is the effect of your eye being drawn to the Abbey, this pool of light on the Abbey there, caused by that elliptical vignette that I've added to the image. Now, my favourite part of Fountains Abbey is photographing the ceiling works in there. And there's I've taken quite a few, and I've included a few in this selection. This one, again, a lot of them I've gone to black and white. This is not my preferred crop. I much prefer a vertical shot that I took, but unfortunately, despite having 8 stops of image stabilization on my R5 and its lens, I still managed to get a little bit of camera shake on the shot that I took in vertical format. And because I wasn't in photographer mode, I was more in tourist mode, I ended up only taking 1 shot. Big mistake. Never just take 1 shot. I had a number of horizontal ones such as this, so these are the next best thing I could come up with. Again, converted to black and white, used the classic black and white 3 profile within Lightroom, and I've increased the contrast, increased the clarity. I've brought the highlights down as well, because this area was quite bright at the bottom with it, and I wanted that to work. There is also a sort of slight vignette on here, on there. It's not huge, but it does make a little bit of a difference if I show you. Oh, wrong. I'll try that. That's without, that's with. And I think on this occasion the vignette really does help the image, even though it's quite subtle on there. Moving along. This was outside, but again, similar sort of black and white conversion to it. But what I really liked was the repetition here. We've got the repetition of the columns, we've got the repetition of the arches, all sort of foreshortened by using 91mm lens on there to just sort of compress them a little bit. And it just forms this area of repetition, which I rather like on there. I think it works well as a black and white image. As you can see, I was shooting at 400th of a second, ISO 100 to keep everything as clean as possible and minimum amount of noise. Moving back inside, here's another one with those the buttresses on there, and this time it's a repetition shot. I wasn't quite in the center on it, but not far off. I've let the window go overexposed to highlight the cross in the middle of there, and again similar sort of black and white conversion with it, and again that slight vignette, which if I just take it off, put it back on again, I think helps draw you into the image on there. Looking at the basic settings on there, again highlights down to preserve as much detail as I possibly could on the window, and particularly on these areas where the light is leaching in. So rather pleased with that one on there. So moving along, same location, different angle, and this time in colour. I thought I'd try the shot in colour. And now what's interesting about this is it's an HDR, but it's a handheld HDR image. and I took several shots, different exposures, and I think I combined 3 shots here to create this. Certainly I had one exposed for the highlights, one for the deep shadows and one for the midtones, and I just let Lightroom's algorithm do its thing and then played around with the settings. I had it set to do automatic settings on there. It does a reasonable job with the HDRs actually, and then just tweak them a little bit to capture the detail in there. And I think that works nicely. I think the colour works nicely. I like the way these lines just fan out on this side. We've got the repetition of the pillars forming actually a lead-in line there. I was tempted to take a bit more off, but I like the fact that the stone footing is there, and I couldn't really take much more off the bottom anyway with that, so I left it as it was on that. I then did a black and white conversion of the same of one of the shots. It wasn't actually one from the HDR, but similar sort of idea as before. This time I've allowed the highlights to overexpose on there, and you can see I've just a little bit that's overexposed. I actually have retained much of the detail by reducing the highlights. The dynamic range on the R5 is quite impressive. At some point I need to do some tests to try and really understand just how wide that dynamic range is. I'm finding I'm putting in more exposure compensation than I actually need because the JPEG on the back of the camera is not showing up the dynamic range as I would expect. So that worked well, and again I was shooting ISO 400, which if I just zoom in on here, you can see is really clean anyway on there. I did do, was this one I did a little bit of noise reduction on? Very little, no, just the standard on there, so it's not even been noise reduced on it on there. So ISO 400 has worked incredibly well with this shot, and again the usual sort of thing, adding in contrast to give me that true black in there and some highlights, so I've got that full range of brightnesses. Anne, my wife, pointed out these 3 archways and the arches within arches within arches. So I had a go at this. This was again HDR. I wanted to frame it again with an arch, so that it's really a case of nested arches on here. One of the things I've done in post-production, there was just a slither of light round about here on the ground, coming in from around here, coming in from the window or the doorway, and it just was a little bit distracting. Unlike this one, which has context, it just seemed to come from nowhere. So I've cloned that out, and again I think this was about 3 shots combined together to produce it. Wide angle 24mm. It was all handheld to do it at ISO 400, and again if I come in you can see just how clean that image is on there. There's next to no noise at ISO 400 with the R5. Really impressed with that. And then the conversion to black and white. I'm very much undecided on this, whether the colour or black and white is better, so do let me know in the comments or in the live chat which of the two that you prefer. And that is my tour of Fountains Abbey. I hope some of the background and the thought process behind creating the images has been helpful to you, and that what I've shared helps. It's not as in-depth as I would have liked to have done, but it's the most I can manage at the moment on this kind of shot, this kind of shoot. So thanks for that, and let's jump back to me live here. And here I am. Right, thank you for the comments in the live chat on that. It was a wonderful location on there, and one I want to go back to with my photographer head on at some point and do a bit more photography there. So this week's live stream is sponsored by, no, not Lucozade. It's sponsored by you as ever, and as ever my thanks to everyone who's bought me a cuppa. If you find these weekly live streams helpful and want to contribute to keeping them online and going each week, then you can do so by buying me a cup of tea at the link there, buymeatea.com/Ian Butty. My wife reckons that this week I should be asking people to buy me a Lucozade instead, and thus the image. Anyway, let's move on. The comments I've already shown on there, so time to move on to the next round of feedback. This is the Facebook images which were submitted over the last fortnight, to be fair. So let me give you some feedback on your images from my Facebook group. So head over to Lightroom. Right, let's have a look at the photographs from the Facebook group this week, and we've got 9 images. So let's start at the beginning and look at this. This is from Andy May. I believe he's also done a YouTube video about the creation of this. Now, Andy asked one question about the shot, and that was about the railing and it being more of a lead outline rather than a lead inline. I think on that I do agree with you, Andy, that it's almost a barrier to the scene. I like the fact that it's leading in from the edge. I think you've just about got away with it, but it's not leading you to the subject on there. The colours on the image are fantastic, as ever. There is one minor change I would make to the image. So let me head over into the develop module and I can show you what that is. I think you can probably guess, Andy. You know my liking for keeping detail sorted, so there we go. I would just clone out the grid on there just to simplify the image on that. Other than that, I actually do think it works even with the railing, so I don't think you've got a real issue with it. It would have been nicer to try and find a position where the railing was leading you more to the subject rather than out of the frame, but it's a nitpick, so I wouldn't worry too much about it, Andy, on that. The next image, or the next 2 images, are from Richard Lovelock and more of his amazing Kingfisher images. Richard, I don't know whether I know you won't be watching this live because you're on another cruise ship, aren't you? But hopefully you'll see this eventually. But what another absolutely stunning Kingfisher image. Well done. There is nothing I would criticise on this at all. Similarly, on the next one is absolutely stunning. You've got a lovely mix of frozen water and blurred action on there, and both images absolutely stunning. If I've got a very, very slight nitpick with this one, it would be the lighter tones up here, sort of pulling my eye very slightly away. That might be possible to deal with in post-production. So if I take an adjustment brush, which is Q, and what I'm going to do, not Q, K, you can tell I'm not at 100%. What I'm going to do with it, I'll reset everything first of all, and then I'm just going to bring highlights down on there. The feather is low at 20, I'm going to bring that up to about 35, I should think, and then that will allow me to start painting on here to darken those up. The more I go over it, the darker it gets. But because I'm doing it by just affecting the highlights, it means it shouldn't affect too much of the other areas. So that's darkened it a little bit. I'll probably do just a touch on there as well. And so I don't get that down further. Right there. Now at this point I can just play a little bit with the exposure and just try and pull that down just a fraction so that it's not drawing the eye away. The one down here is a bit harder to deal with, but let's have a look at the before and after on this. Come out of the adjustment brush, K, and that's before and after. You can see it's subtle, but it helps just a little bit with that image. But stunning shot. It reminds me of almost an aquatic phoenix rising from watery ashes on there. Well done as ever, Richard. John Barton, right. I've said this many a time to you on the live stream, and I'm going to say it again now. You will be judged on the worst image you post, and this is a terrible image. Sorry to mince my words on it. It just does not work. I mean, okay, it's small. I can't tell whether it's in focus or not, but it appears like you can't see what the guy's doing. He's out of focus, and that could be with motion blur. It could be something else. He's sort of skateboarding at the back of the scene. I can barely see the skateboard because it's in line with the grass behind him. The image just doesn't work. You can do much better than this, John. I would really strongly recommend that you limit yourself to, if I said no more than 3 images from you per week in the group, would you be able to do it? And choose your top 3. You are a good photographer, but you're not doing yourself any favors posting images like this that just do not work. People will look at that and will judge your photography on an image of this quality, not on the good stuff that you can produce. Sorry to be harsh with you, but I really want you to improve, and the only way you're going to improve is sometimes it's tough love, and an image like this, it's a reject. There is no other word for it. I'm sorry. I hate being harsh, but on this occasion I think I have to be. Moving on to your other image, John, this one has really great potential. I love the astrophotography in it, but what has spoilt it is your positioning within the frame. By positioning yourself there, you've got the torch beam coming out of the top of your head like some kind of alien. What would have been much better if you'd have positioned yourself over towards the side of the frame here and then shone the light out as a diagonal. That would have been a much stronger image. Think about those rules of composition, the use of strong diagonals in there. Think about making sure that if you're shining a torch, let's see the torch in the hand rather than it just coming out of the top of your head. because at the moment it looks like you're one of the aliens coming to invade on there. The astrophotography is brilliant. I'm afraid let down by the figure and the positioning of the torch beam. And just a simple move of it to point it to the corner of the frame up here would have been so much better on that shot. Janice, 2 images I've selected from the set of flower images that you posted. I've selected the best 2, and I selected this one initially because of the bright area there. You see how that's drawing the eye up to the top of the frame, and this light area. So easy to fix, and in fact, having downloaded it for to talk about, I then discovered you had actually fixed it by cropping in. Now, unfortunately, this one's a little bit soft compared to the other. Now, it might just be a resolution because it's low resolution on Facebook. This is why I ask people to send images to me via email for proper critiquing. But can you see with this, is a much stronger composition. We haven't got that bright area drawing the eye away from the frame. Everything appears to be in focus on there. So really good shot. Well done, Janice, and thank you for sharing it with the group. Sonia, I don't really need to say, do I? You know what I'm going to say about this. Just the end of the proboscis antennae on there. It's such a shame to have lost that because everything else is superb. Critical focus on there as far as I can tell at this resolution. Wonderful background, nicely out of focus. The little bit of light behind the bug provides that separation that it needs. So the image worked really well. Lovely composition. Just such a shame about losing the tip of it on there. But other than that, great shot. Astrid, thank you for sharing. This is a lovely little shot of a child and watermelon. The one thing I would say with this is we've got a problem of what's known as mergers, where the lighter, the darker hair is disappearing into the dark background. Now, I suspect that's partly because you're using on-camera flash, I think, looking at those catch lights in there, which is a very forward lighting. One way you could have dealt with that is to bounce the light off somewhere else, perhaps bounce off the ceiling if you've got a way to. I don't know what camera you're shooting with, but if you've got an external flash gun and you can point it upwards, point it up at the ceiling, and bounce the light off there, that would have helped with it on there. Failing that, use just ambient light and try to get some of the light behind. Is it possible to do anything in post-production with it? Well, let's have a look. It might be possible if I just raise those shadows just a little bit. I don't really want to go much further than that. A little bit too far. And that just helps provide a little bit of separation. In Photoshop, yes, I could do a lot more with it, but could we just straighten things a little bit as well? That background looked a bit cockeyed. I would have said something more like that, and also by tightening it up a little bit will help make it work. So something like that with there on that one. And that is the last of the Facebook images, so time to hand back to me live, not in the studio but here at home. And here I am for the final section of the evening. Just one or two comments in there. I've got to echo Andy's comment about Richard's Kingfisher. It is indeed amazing. I'm very envious of him getting those shots. I just don't have the patience for doing that kind of photography, sadly. Right, so Yep, that was the comments. Member photo of the week. What's it going to be from this week's selection? Well, I guess it'll be no surprise. It's got to be the Kingfisher. I actually prefer the other one, the Water Phoenix, but this one works better as a banner, so I've chosen this one. So congratulations, Richard, on photo of the week, and I'll change it shortly, and that is what it will look like on the website shortly. So post your images during the week, and maybe your image will be the image of the week next week. So there's nothing new in the live chat on there. Just to say, next Sunday, hopefully I'll be back in the studio. Hopefully this darn bug will be something in the past, and hopefully I'll have my voice back as well. So next Sunday, what I'm planning to do is all about exposure modes, and I'm going to look at the different modes on a camera for how you calculate your exposure, things like evaluative, center weighted, spot metering and things like that, and some advice on how to do things like spot metering. And if I've got time, I might look at the technique of ETTR, exposed to the right, although that could be covered as an entire topic in its own right the following week. So that's what I'm looking at then. Do email images to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk and post them to the Facebook group as well for other people to comment on and to give feedback on. And thank you for bearing with me on this more unusual of live streams. So until next time, thanks for watching, and as ever, keep making great photos. Bye for now.